Hi, I'm Michael Katz. I'm the creator of the new comic, The Night Fox. Also done Golden Years, Horror Show, Riot Earp, and Metalhead. You can find me at stridernolan.com. My Twitter handle is stridernolan13, and you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Hi, I'm Keith Champagne, the 14th most handsome comic book creator for DC, Marvel, and more companies than you can shake a stick at. I'm a writer, artist, inker, letterer, publisher, and all around swell guy. Catch me on Instagram at the pretentious Keith Champagne for a better look at what I do. And you're watching and listening to Two Geeks Talking.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Two Geeks Talking is an entertainment industry interview show where we interview the creative people from the comic, film, TV, movie, and video game industries. And of course, I'm your host, Kurt Sasso. We are joined today by two heavyweights in the comic industry when it comes to creativity, art style, lettering, editing, the whole shebang. They've both been on the show in the past. We, of course, joined by the ever-talented Michael S. Katz and Keith Champagne, creating the comic series, well, the spin-off, I should say, Night Fox, and Keith is creating Punch. How are you both doing today?
I'm doing well. I wouldn't consider myself a heavyweight. Keith is. I'm just riding his coattails.
I'm definitely no heavyweight, but I'm glad to be on the show today, Kurt.
I appreciate it. Well, for those that don't know anything about yourselves as creative people, tell us who you are and what you're bringing to Two Geeks Talking today.
I started publishing in 2002 with Strider Nolan Media. We did prose for years, fiction and nonfiction. And then about 4 years ago, I started dabbling in comic books and I released some on Kickstarter. And I think the current one, Night Fox, is my 9th or 10th release.
Is it really?
Yeah.
I have to do the math in my head. I didn't realize you were that deep. Let's see, what's good about me? Not much, really. I started working in 1993 professionally for Marvel and DC Comics, and I've never looked back. Now I'm in my 50s, and I think I should have done something different for a living, but it's too late for me now. In addition to my mainstream work, I got a little publishing company called New Pain Pro, and we've been releasing books every quarter on Kickstarter for the past 3 years. Daybreak, Jump, The Switch Electricia, and we got a new book here called Punch, which stands for Pubescent Undercover Neurodiverse Cryptid Hunters, coming up in just a couple of days on the crowdfunding platform of your dreams.
I got to see Night Fox, got to see Punch there. Both very amazing comics and unique comics in the sense of both different genres, although both feel like they're in the superhero vein here. Michael, what led to you to create Night Fox as a spin-off series from Golden Years?
Night Fox actually came first. Night Fox I created years ago, and I mean maybe 10 years ago I actually had a fully illustrated story. I wasn't happy with how it had turned out. And then back then you didn't have, Kickstarter to launch books anyway, so I never did anything with it. But when I did Golden Years, I decided to throw my Night Fox character in there. It was fun writing him, and I knew that one day I wanted the opportunity to give him his own show.
Like, who was the artist of the one that you did 10 years ago?
Oh boy, I can't even remember. There's some guy from Britain, from England.
Brian Hitch?
Nah.
Alan Davis? You got Alan Davis to do that?
Yeah, Alan Davis. Alan Davis, I just didn't like his style, so I didn't go anywhere with it.
Spin-off series, I think, kind of get a bad rap because everyone thinks that's just, they could be like B stories or secondary stories. And I know your style of writing, you don't do anything half-assed. You definitely put your full effort into everything that you've created here. What's the biggest misconception that people may have about creating a spin-off series, though?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm hoping that it being a spin-off leads to a lot more backers, automatically. And we'll see. Because at this point in time, the project hasn't started, but I do have 99 followers in about a week. And I think that's a pretty big number, especially considering the short period of time. So I'm hoping that a spin-off from a successful series will be, as successful on its own from that prior audience and hopefully building more onto that audience with new clients.
So, Keith, how about yourself there? I'm sure you've worked on a variety of projects from the professional scene and with your own work here. What's your thoughts on spin-off series, say, for the big two?
Well, I think if you are lucky enough to stumble into a concept that the readership seems excited by, it's definitely always a good idea to just see if that concept has any legs. Night Fox, I thought was the coolest character in the Golden Age books that Mike did. I like the idea that it's three people, working together as one character. I'm interested to kind of see where it goes myself. To be honest with you, I think Mike is smart to do it. And like he said, you got 99 people signing up to back this campaign or to follow this campaign, at least, in the past week, which is great. Like there's clearly some kind of enthusiasm for the book and also for the way that he's creating his books and fulfilling them, consistently.
The fact that you've done the superhero genre, you both have, and it seems to be more of a darker and gritty series whenever I've spoken to you. But this time around, we're looking at Night Fox, we're looking at like bright colors, we're looking at a lighthearted kind of change of pace when it comes to the superhero genre, at least with you both working on this project. How has that been for your creativity, and what do you enjoy about this change of pace?
I think I'm mostly lighthearted by nature. So I relate the best to, projects like Night Fox. I mean, sure, I have some dark aspects to my personality. And that's where things like horror show and metalhead, come into play. There are other projects that are, walk on the dark side of things I could bring out. But I'm just trying to create variety and hope that one of these projects catches lightning one day. And then, I would still go with, variety in the future, but if something in particular, catches fire, I would stick with it.
How would you deal with the fame if you suddenly caught fire, so to speak?
Well, if I was successful, I could quit my day job, do that in a minute. I don't think that's going to happen. It would be nice to, even if it's after I retire, to be able to create comics full time.
And then, Keith, for yourself here, how has working on a series like Night Fox helped your creativity?
I don't know if it's helped my creativity per se. My job on Night Fox is to sort of help Mike explore his creativity, his sexuality, his vibrance as a man. No, I don't know. I just try to bring out the best in what Mike is bringing to the table on this project.
Well, because you're the editor and letterer, and I haven't even talked about your roles yet. In your experience, what makes a good editor and what makes a good letterer?
Well, it's sort of a good letterer stays out of the way. You don't really want to notice the lettering. If you notice the lettering too much, then the letterer is not doing his job well. It's got to be sort of invisible and helps to carry the story through the book. As an editor, and I sort of edit on the page as I letter with dialogue, etc. If I can just push it a little bit, make it a little more conversational, always keeping it true to the spirit of what Mike is intending. I don't like to change too much, but Mike gives me a lot of latitude just to push it or pull it if we need to, as long as we stick to the main story.
Because you've worked in so many different areas as an editor, who's been a good mentor as an editor for you?
To me, the best editor I ever worked with is my friend Pete Tomasi. He was my editor for, 5 or 6 years consistently at DC. I just stayed in his office and did a lot of books with him. And I always admired the way that he treated people. He treated everyone like they were important. He was always honest. He wasn't afraid to say no, which a lot of people have trouble doing. And just has a great mind for story. People have seen since he left staff and became a writer, he's done really well for himself, writing comics too. So he was a good inspiration for me, both in my desire to write and as a role model for what an editor should be. And I think he was very much in the vein of Archie Goodwin. Sort of, you can go down from Archie to Tomasi. And not to me, I'm not that much of an editor, but the same philosophy of it is, hire good people, stay out of the way, and help when you need to.
I'm so fascinated just about the comic industry as a whole, whether it's indie or professional. I just think that if more people understood the different roles and different positions that everyone does and a little more deeper understanding of it, I think maybe they'll find a passion for what they may want to do in their life rather than becoming, say, a doctor or something.
Yeah, no, maybe. I mean, I don't even understand what half the people do. I mean, I've been doing it all.
What is a different ability you wish the main character of Night Fox had that would completely change the story's dynamic, and how would that impact their journey?
I can't really answer that because if he had a different ability, it would be a totally different character. The writing process would just take me down a different rabbit hole, in a totally different direction. And I think that's part and parcel when you work for, say, the big two or one of the other companies, when you have to write for someone else's character. And I've done this when I've co-written stuff in prose projects where I've had to write other people's character, where you're limited, and it makes it tougher to work in that particular playground without going outside the boundaries.
Do you find that in terms of writing, though, is it good to have that type of structure, or is it better to try to be able to have a bit more flexibility when it comes to characters and writing a story?
Flexibility is easy. Structure is hard. So I would prefer flexibility, but when you create a character and you have a plot in mind, it's pretty tough to change the character in midstream. You would have to go back and redo everything you wrote pretty much. If you say, okay, well now he can fly, or now he has heat vision. Okay, so then you got to go back and say, okay, then how would a guy with flight, how would a guy with heat vision be acting in these different situations, as opposed to a guy who's just a street level fighter? And it just opens up a whole new can of worms.
Just means you need a spin-off of the spin-off, like a What If series or something. If you had to create a Night Fox boot camp to train aspiring comic creators, what would be the 3 most critical exercises or lessons?
For comic book creators, I would say the first lesson you got to learn is a discipline, because a lot of times you might not feel creative, or you might not feel like drawing or writing or what have you, but you got to respect the deadline. You got to make yourself work anyway. The second quality I would try to instill in people is discipline. Sometimes you're not going to feel like you want to work. You don't really feel creative, but you got to respect the deadline. You got to get the work done anyway. The third quality I'd like to impose on anyone that goes to my boot camp is discipline. I think it's important to learn to work when you're not feeling creative. You don't really feel like doing the work, but you got to respect the deadline and get the work done anyway.
I don't know if I can come up with 3. I think first and foremost is know everything you can about crowdfunding before you start, and learn even more after you've finished, and keep learning, because there's always new stuff when you're dealing with Kickstarter and Zoop and the like, social media like Twitter and Instagram. You're dealing with algorithms. They're so difficult to deal with, and it's so difficult to get through or go around the system to get noticed, that you need to know anything and everything there is in the crowdfunding playbook that you can sink your teeth into.
The fact that you're both running campaigns simultaneously here for 2 separate projects, it's got to be tough, like you mentioned with the algorithm. But what are like 1 or 2 tips you could give someone that is starting their campaign for the first time? Because myself, I'm going to be working on a horror film, which is a completely different medium compared to, say, comic books, but the same concepts would still apply. You're still trying to reach the masses in 30 days or more or less.
Well, Keith and I have done cross promotion a few times now, and I think it helps. There's strength in numbers. My visitors, will hear about his book. His visitors will hear about my book, and just hopefully bring fresh sets of eyes to each other's projects. For example, if I give a shout out to my book on Twitter, I'll also try and give a shout out to Keith's book too. For example, your podcast, we invite each other to things like that, just to help us, further get the word out.
Well, the advice I usually give to people that are going to crowdfund is to, in terms of comics, to have the book done first before you launch the campaign, because I think it's important to be able to fulfill the projects on time and build trust with your backers. So, you want a quality product that they know they're going to get when you promise it. And then the other bit of advice I would give is to get to be friends with Michael Katz, because he's very generous in terms of helping to promote your project and things like that. Yeah, that's the best I got.
If you could have dinner with any three comic creators, live or dead, to discuss, say, Night Fox or Punch, who would they be and why?
Man, that's a good question, because I've had dinner with a lot of people, and I don't like talking to a lot of them. I think I would have dinner with Joe Kubert, who I adored, and it'd be nice to catch up with him and show him what I'm doing now. I might throw John Byrne in there because I just don't know him very well, and it would be fun to eat and talk shop about different comics and what I'm doing, see if he has any advice or what have you, because he's kind of like my hero. And then I'd probably throw Alan Moore in there just so he can tell me how stupid I am for trying to do comics.
Byrne was my comic book hero, growing up, quote unquote. I loved his work on the X-Men and Superman, and then I went back and got his stuff in Iron Fist. He was just I'm not a professional artist, but I do like to draw when I can, and Byrne was probably the biggest influence on me on my drawing style.
Well, there's never going to be another John Byrne in this business. A guy that is, putting out 2 or 3 books a month for years on end. And every book is a top flight, like a really great comic. The guys now are lucky they can put out 3 books in a year, let alone 3 books, in a month. Like, it's crazy the work ethic that he had, and the boundless creativity, and his takes on a lot of the characters are the iconic takes on these guys. And he definitely was a unicorn in the day.
Do you still see that creativity nowadays from the younger generations, or is it because, say, technology has advanced to a certain state where mentorship, where apprenticeship just isn't at the same level of, say, back in your day when you were working with these people?
That's an interesting question. I see, the kids I see the most are my kids, who are both very creative, naturally creative, young people. They're 20 and 14, my kids. But they're much more interested in their phones than they are in buckling down and doing the work to develop that creativity. And I wonder if this wave of technology that these kids are growing up in is just kind of stifling the creativity in a way. I drew a lot when I was a kid for a couple of reasons. I enjoyed it. People told me I was good at it, so it made me feel good about myself. And also, I had a lot of free time, and I would spend that time dreaming of comic books and drawing. And the kids these days with their free time, I don't know how many of them are really incentivized to sit down and draw for 10 hours a day, for fun, when they can go on the YouTube or fall into the black hole of their phones and watch, America's Got Talent auditions for 6 hours straight. It's a different time. Yeah, it's a tough question.
It's funny because I would think with technology today, it'd be easier to draw, it'd be quicker to create artwork on a computer, than on the, tablet with pencil and ink. But I think, and I may be wrong because I'm not in the industry per se, but my guess would be that you don't have a lot of creators who are able to do this full time, that you got many people who are doing this as a side gig, and that they don't have the time to devote 10 hours a day because they've got full-time jobs dragging them down. I think the industry is probably different now than it was 30 years ago.
I saw something somewhere where I think it was like Will I Am or something, and he said, I was at a crossroads in my career where I wanted to make music, but society and family basically said I should focus my career towards an actual profession rather than music. And he said, I would rather put my positive energy towards something I am passionate about and good at versus having my energy taken away by something where my creativity would be useless. It kind of stuck with me recently.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, I wanted to be a writer. I was in high school. I wanted to be a writer and make comic books, and I tried. I submitted, stuff to Marvel and DC, but you kind of give up your dream, pretty quickly. Most people do, and I did. And I went into to law. Not happy about it, but yeah, I stick with it because I'm good at it. I'd much rather be, making comic books, full time.
I think you're there. You're making comic books. It's not like you stopped. It's not like you went law full time, or else you wouldn't be on the show. Uh, and then Keith has been in it for many decades as well too. So, look, you're both very talented, creative people. You both have been doing amazing work. I love reading what you both do, so I think it's amazing to see, and I'm just very fortunate to have you both on the show here. And I really appreciate you guys taking the time for that. If you could have a superhero assist you in your creative processes, who would they be and why?
I don't want to say the Flash because I don't need speed. I need maybe an artist like Captain America, Steve Rogers.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was an artist when during the John Byrne year.
When Mark Grunwald wrote Captain America, he had him actually drawing the Captain America comic, like for Marvel back in that was a weird meta little storyline going on for a bit. And Cap would travel around in his van across the country, and then he like at night would draw pages to get to his editors at Marvel Comics.
I read those. I just can't remember it. I just remember him turning into a werewolf.
For me, I would have Wolverine help because he's the best there is at what he does.
There you go.
So he must be good at everything, right?
And he'd make a point to the editor, say, no, this is what you need to have on the page.
Yeah, he wouldn't take any shit from editor. I'm not changing my story.
So who's the team around Night Fox?
Well, I'm writing it. Keith is pitching in as editor, letterer, bon vivant. Artist is Joel Souza. He's doing the pencils, inks, and colors. He did a 10-page backup story in the Riot Earp special, and he's also done a 10-page Riot Earp story that will be coming out in the trade paperback collection sometime next year. His style, kind of a Bruce Timm look to his artwork, and I think it works perfectly for the this particular project.
Immediately when I saw just the first couple of images, I was like, Bruce Timm. Instant for me. I was just like, this, it's beautiful. He's an amazing artist, by the way. The colors, everything. It's amazing. Every time you come on the show here, Michael, you luck out with such talent of artists and other people like Keith, working with you to put together your books.
Yeah, Mike is the kingmaker. Like, he worked with Neto Diaz, and then a couple years later now Neto's drawing the X-Men for Marvel. What was the guy's name that did Metalhead, Mike?
Bruno Abdias.
Yeah, he was doing some big-time work for DC, right?
Yeah, he did Cyborg. I think he also worked for Dark Horse doing Godzilla.
So you're like the alpha and omega of the start of people's careers.
I'm working with you. When do I get my shot at the big time, Mike?
When do I get my shot? Raising other people, by the bootstraps. What do I go?
What you don't realize is that you have it better off doing your own thing than working for Marvel or DC. And I think everyone's got that itch to scratch, for sure. Yeah. You actually have the best of all worlds right now doing your own thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy just doing it once. I'd be happy to be a one-hit wonder. I'd be satisfied. I'd be able to say, yeah, I wrote 4 issues of Batman, or yeah, I wrote 4 issues of Daredevil once, and just keep that in the back of my memory for the rest of my life. I could be satisfied doing that.
Sure. Hey, whatever works for you, bro.
I do hate to say it, Michael and Keith, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. I want to thank you both so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Anytime you can help us promote our books. Anytime we can use you for our own means,
sure.
By all means, we're in.
Yeah, no, 16 years of doing that, so I'm glad to get guests like you both on the show, and it helps this small channel, keep its lights on. So I appreciate it either way. For those that want to support you both with your various projects, how can we support you? How can we find you? And anything else you would both like to promote?
So, Punch itself will be going live on Kickstarter on Monday night, about 8 o'clock. I like to do a soft launch on Monday nights, and it gives my previous backers a chance to grab the early bird rewards before the general public becomes aware of it on the next day. You can go to newpainpro.bigcartel.com, which is our catalog of books, and a bunch will be listed on there soon too. New Pain Instagram page, or my Instagram page, Katz Keith Champagne, is a good place to stay up to date on the things we're doing also.
Yeah, for me, I post more frequently on Twitter under the handle Strider Nolan 13, and I'll have links to my Kickstarter page and all. I do post on Instagram, and I think my handle there is just Michael S. Katz. Best thing to do is jump on Kickstarter and search for Night Fox or search for Punch, and you'll find their projects.
Again, pleasure speaking with you both, but that ends this particular episode of Two Geeks Talking. You can, of course, find this interview and 1,200 plus others on our website, tgtmedia.com or twogeekstalking.com. That's TWO. Website's going through a complete rebuild, so go to our YouTube channel. That's always updated, youtube.com/TGTmedia. The podcast you can find at twogeekstalking.podbean.com, or just search Two Geeks Talking wherever you get your podcasts. And as I say every week, everyone has a story to tell. It's up to me to help bring that out. Thanks for listening and watching on Two Geeks Talking.